Hey guys, how's it going? It's January 23rd, 2018 at 10:07 p.m. So I'm running a little later than I expected to tonight. I had a few things that I had to take care of around the house. But anyways, I'll just leave it right there. I was going to go through some of the various, well, not the various, a couple of the posts that I had this morning, but or this morning, this afternoon, into this evening. But this is one of these days where it's really scary taking a jump or taking a huge risk or taking a change or even admitting that you failed at something. And failure is okay. I think no matter what failures I've had over the past, I don't know. Well, the one success I've had is I've had my first full, 2017 was my first full year of employment. I'd say quality employment in a while. So that was good. But other than that, 2017, from a hobby standpoint, I think started changing. I think I used to have a lot of more time on my hands. Now, mind you, had various jobs in between, a lot of temp jobs, all kinds of different things. Oddly enough, it wasn't until I started working that I realized, I'm working 35 hours a week, which is not much, but it's comfortable. I actually have a salary. I'm not forced to work extra hours. Every now and then I'll work an extra hour, and every now and then I get an extra hour off. So most of the time I work 35 hours. It never really goes more than, maybe an extra hour here and there if I feel like doing something a little bit, or if I have to go have an appointment or whatever, it goes to 34. So anyways, it's always pretty much 35 hours. They don't take advantage of me. I've had places that take advantage of these salary type things. But I figured I'd put that little logo on the screen. This was something that I put up on TrainSim. It's just this is, first of all, RTS has been around for 8 years. Some people don't know that. And the original concept that I had for RTS was to become a full-fledged railroad transportation simulator. I wanted to simulate everything that there was between car forwarding, movements, switching, dispatching, and I basically, it was quiet here a few minutes ago, so as soon as I start, of course the dogs start, but anyways, what else is new? But anyways, I'll try to ignore them. But it's kind of one of these days where, I was really excited about it. And then you start thinking, well, what if I fail? Or what if I don't succeed? Or what if I fall flat on my face? And then I'm thinking to myself, really, that doesn't matter too much, because if I worry about that, I'm never going to take a chance. And I took a lot of chances. When you look back at this, I know I sound down a little bit right now, and I'm not really. I'm trying to contemplate exactly, what drastic change I just made. And it is a drastic change, because 24 hours ago, I saw what turned out to be the fourth person in a thread that showed some interest in Florida Sanford sub. 4 people. And a lot of these people they're very interested in it, and it's kind of interesting because it's a good thing. It's a good thing that that happened. It's a good thing it wasn't. From the various people, it's a good thing it wasn't a lot more people who were counting on me. So, I mean, of the people, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but for the most part, people are going to live without it, quite frankly. And I've told, and if you're new or if you're basically looking for something, there's plenty of servers out there. In fact, some of them, Scott, for example, he puts his own servers up. Smiley posts his own servers. There's a Southwest server. There's a Southeast server. There's plenty of servers that are available out there. What I always try to do was a little bit something different, and it wasn't so much that I put it this way. I'm a procrastinator, and I like to. I normally will take the path of least resistance. Why bother fighting? Why bother necessarily swimming upstream? Why, go with the flow, just, keep things nice and calm and comfortable. Don't rustle feathers, don't start, the things. But at the same time, I also have a tendency to swim upstream. I have a tendency to speak my mind, and I have a tendency to burn bridges. So it's kind of an interesting little mix of character that I tend to have. So on one hand, I'm very, I can procrastinate. I like to keep things calm. I like to just go with the flow, relax, enjoy, have fun. But there's this one side of me that wants to change the world. There's this one side of me that wants to do something because I don't care what other people think. Yet the many times I do care what people think. Obviously, I cared what people thought about the forum posts. I thought about the YouTube posts. I thought about the thumbs up, the thumbs down, the likes, the comments, the trolls, you name it. I started thinking about all of these things. But my nature and what I try to pride myself on is not being afraid to go against the throw, not being afraid to go against the flow, not being afraid to fall flat on my face a few times, make a few failed attempts, failed launches or whatever. The good thing was RTS as a Run 8 server or network or whatever we were at one point, and we still are. I mean, RTS is still here. The Wikia is still here. I'm still going to support Run 8. I'm still going to encourage or answer questions about Run 8. I still have the majority of the hundreds of my videos. I just got another half a dozen likes on yesterday's video, which I was enjoying, and everything's great. To that essence, everything was fine. Everything was going good. But I didn't just put a server out to be the most popular. I didn't put a server out to do what everybody else did. I put a server out under my image. And I also went against the grain or went against the current when it comes to everybody liked TeamSpeak. Well, I didn't. So did I compromise? No. I never used TeamSpeak. Somebody wanted a YouTube Facebook for RTS. Well, yeah, I let them put it up there, but I wasn't going to have anything to do with it. And really, I haven't, I posted a few things to it, but I really don't have anything to do with it. In fact, I'm shutting down all my Facebook accounts come the end of the month. I've already given warning to everybody. A lot of things that happened in 2017 that have become very distracting. I already have my hobbies with my son. I've got plenty of hobbies. Um, Subsistence, for example, something my son and I enjoy. Well, they just came out with a major update. Found that out this evening. I was like, wow, oh, that's cool. So the cool part about it, though, is I'm in no hurry to get into the things that I do with my son on a weekend during the week. But I have become less and less interested in getting into Run 8. So I was kind of in limbo land for a little while. I was just like, okay, I don't have this interest. I didn't know if I was losing interest in trains, to be quite honest. But I know when I run or start up Run 8 and start switching around, I know how much I enjoy it. So I'm not trying to deprive myself of enjoyment. It's not about that. But let me explain to you what this is about and why. And I think I was going to start with 2017, but let me start at the beginning. And hopefully this, yeah, I've said this a long time ago. I've talked about the whole week thing with my son and all that. That's I don't think that's going on. I mean, that may play into my mood sometimes, but in reality, I've been in a pretty good mood lately. I've been able to handle it. My memory sometimes feels that way, but I think I get into habits, subconscious habits. So that's the weekly thing. I'm not going to talk about the weekly thing. I'm going to go back to where things started for RTS, where the concept began. Microsoft Train Simulator, I had been there since day one. So combined now, I would say, what are we getting close? I would say even before Microsoft Train Simulator, there were other simulators, very basic kind of things like Siam and UK Train Sim, or not UK Train Sim. Well, maybe that's what it was called. I can't remember. It was some UK simulator that had a North American searchlight signals or whatever, and there was no graphics. And I used to think those were the coolest things. I mean, the physics were, the physics were worse than Train Sim World, put it that way. But speaking of Train Sim World, that was something I was ready to latch onto as well. And all it was going to be was something to just keep me happy, keep me content. But 8 years ago, I was getting really tired of writing activities for Microsoft Train Simulator, and there was a lot of different products. It was very similar to what happened over the last year, actually, because it's the same, but it's different, because what had happened then was, in that essence, I wrote a lot of activities, and I was tired of writing my own stories. Run 8 does have its own little issues that I've pointed out before, that probably I'm the only one that notices, so it's not widespread known issues, unlike Microsoft Train Simulator, which had very known issues, both in the root and activity editors. But so I was, like I said, I was tired of the way you did the activity, and I don't know if this works with Railworks in the same way. You're basically writing a script, or you're writing a sequence of events, and half the time, even when you tried to write it, it didn't always behave the way it should, because the activity editor had its own little buggy things. You had wait points that may or may not work. You had, I used to run Train Dispatcher 3 territories, and then I would record the session, and then I would try to simulate it. I would move cars around, which was god awful to try to do. There was no continuation, so when Run 8 came around, that was a big change for me. But before Run 8 came along, at that point, I was trying to do the RTS concept. My whole concept was to get some type of simulator in there. Either I was going to use something like a Microsoft Train Simulator, or I was going to use something else, or I was going to link up to, at the time, probably was Freight Yard Manager, although the author of Freight Yard Manager had no interest in wanting to do anything multiplayer. Yard Duty, however, was interested in me and actually invited me to start writing with them, because Yard Duty was around. It got discontinued, or I forget how the hell that happened. I think it was a payware that ended up being discontinued, and then somehow they wrote the code or something, and I think it may even be out there. Yard Duty might be out there still. Freight Yard Manager's probably out there still. To this day, I've always said the Freight Yard Manager is the best railroad simulator on the planet. And I meant that. Unfortunately, it has some flaws. Freight Yard Manager is a 2D top-down. It works on Google Maps or something like that for your backgrounds, and then the trains basically nothing fancy graphics. The trains just go in and they come in and they run over, and you get to switch a yard with it, and it's, there's no physics involved, which really isn't the point of it anyways. It's all about Freight Yard Manager is all about managing yards and the flow of traffic to various industries. It does have operational hump yards, and this has been around. This has been around for probably, I would say, 7 years at least, if not more. So that was something that really caught my eye. And the way they did things, now it was kind of like a pay to play type thing, although it wasn't anything to do with paying because it was totally free. But what happened was, my career has been, up and down various times over the past decade. It wasn't until it was over 10 years ago that I had what I would say anything more than 1 year of work. Now, the job I currently have, I'm pretty certain I'm going to have this job until my retirement. I'm that, as long as the economy goes away, the company stays fine. We're on to the 4th generation of a family-owned business with 12 employees, and I've seen family businesses. Profits are good, everything's doing good. So I don't foresee anything, but you never know. You never know for sure. But anyways, before I get onto that, and I'll get onto the whole money thing very shortly, but anyways. So Freight Yard Manager had its little niche thing. But what happened? I lost my train of thought. Now I know what's going on here. So back then, over 10 years ago, was the last time that I held a job for more than 2 years. In fact, I held it for 6, which is kind of ironic because I've been in Run 8 for 6 years too. So it's kind of ironic that it was a 6-year job that I held. It was, until my current job, the best job I ever had. I had steady income. I was making more money than I was spending. That was probably the last time I have ever made more money than I was spending, I think. Although things have changed, wages have been stagnant over the years, and no, it wasn't the last time. I've had other jobs where I've had to work 40, 50 hours a week and commute to make more money than I was spending this time around, but I'll get to that in a minute. I'll get to the whole money thing very shortly. So, but going back to where I was, or where my head was then, I was tired of that. I got into Freight Yard Manager. The problem with Freight Yard Manager is there was times where I had a lot of time, and then there was times where suddenly I got busy. When I had a lot of time, I could run the biggest yards. When I didn't have a lot of time, I had to give up those biggest yards for somebody else. You had solo ownership, or you had teamwork, or you had yard masters who basically they had ownership of various territories, so that when trains came through them, they were able to manage them. And it wasn't real time in the sense that there was trains constantly moving. It was a supply and demand type thing, so that if somebody sent 20 trains to a yard, well, they would get 20 trains that they'd have to handle. And if they had a lot of time to do it, they could do it. If they didn't, then they would either need some help, or they would need to, I forget how it went. You used to upload trains, download trains. It was, I remember a lot of it, but I remember it was an interesting way to do multiplayer. But it was really an email-based type thing where you sent files, and that's how it hooked up to a server, but it sent files. It's kind of weird, and that's how it communicated. So it was never really actual real time. My ideas at that time were to somehow get a 3D simulator involved in between the yards, and bring in people who would be interested in running these trains. I didn't know what train simulator that was going to be. At the time, Microsoft Train Simulator had its Explore mode, and what I suggested was that if an Explore mode was put into play, that I could write a program that could somehow, because there was tracking information or something like that, I believe in Microsoft Train Simulator, there was some way of being able to portray some type of tracking. I forget how the hell that worked. It beats the hell out of me, but I remember somehow I was going to be able to get Microsoft Train Simulator to work with it in Explore mode, and that people could actually run the trains. But then they weren't interested in it. Yard Duty kind of was, but I hadn't heard too much more about it. It really wasn't going anywhere. So this was a time where I was trying to find myself. It was more of a concept. So then I went to the dispatching side, and I said, okay, maybe I can get a bunch of dispatchers together. And I always enjoyed Train Dispatcher 3. So myself, and I've mentioned this story before, myself, Michael Phillips, and Rob Ball. Michael Phillips, who's been on Dams, and he's on Run 8 Depot. I basically introduced him to Run 8, because I got into Run 8. I was still doing this whole TD3 thing, and I was just like, I'm going to get into this Run 8. You should check it out. And sure enough, he checked it out, and he's never looked back since. And unfortunately, Rob Ball, I've kind of fell out of touch with shortly after that. He never, from what I understand, he never came around. He was more of the dispatcher type, but it was very difficult to get dispatchers to get into Run 8. Michael Phillips, he was into it. He obviously became, a major, since day one, user of Run 8. So, and it was, Dale Miller was the one who got me on to Run 8. I was able to get on the beta team. I was able to get in, and I had the opportunity to write software that was going to interact with Run 8 so that I could do car forwarding. I wasn't sure how it was going to work, but once I got into it, and basically I was told that this might be what you're looking for. It was what Dale Miller had said to me. He was right on the money, and indeed it was exactly what I was looking for. It was the engine that work hand in hand with RTS. And for 5 years, it did just that. Although the 5th year was when I backed off a bit, because I didn't know, because version 2 was coming and I didn't know what version 2 was going to bring. So I backed off a little bit. Ski came around. He actually started programming, even bringing RTS to even better heights as far as the availability of accessing files. He was, he's a manager in programming, so he's got all kinds of programming expertise. Whereas me, I was more of 2 years professional experience and years of hobby programming. And technically, I'm what you call a dinosaur. Is probably lack of a better term, I guess. So, confidence in programming is something that I do not have that much of. I'm a good problem solver. I'm a good designer. I have a lot of concepts. I have a lot of ideas that I know work. It's just a matter of me getting it down. I'm also at a point right now where I'm a little shell-shocked when it comes to failure because it's been happening. I've been trying to relaunch myself so many times. And I'm not desperate to get this done, but I feel that, the things have changed. Here's where things started changing for me. And it actually started around, I believe, 2016. 2017 was the big year where everything changed. But in 2016, I was I wanted to develop RTS more. I wanted to take it beyond to where it was, but I don't know. I can't think exact. For some reason, that particular year is a little cloudy to me. But I know I had to drop the California myself from personally hosting California, and Mike was able to come in and take over California as he was already on my server. I wanted to spend more time developing than using. So right then and there, that was a time where it was just like, I'd rather develop more, but at the same time, I enjoy doing it so much that it's very, sometimes you get complacent and you get, you procrastinate and, you work, especially if you work hard. And I think at the time I was working, I was working long hours and stuff like that. So I really was burnt out at the day, whereas now I'm not really burnt out at the end of the day. I'm not. I seldom am burnt out at the end of the day. I'm not even burnt out of Run 8. I know some people suggested I might be, but that's not really what it is. In 2017, at the beginning, we were already in the midst of version 2. None of us at the end of 2016 knew what version 2 was going to bring. Just like any other thing that Run 8 usually brings, they are fairly secret and protective about their product, which, believe it or not, I do understand that because, honestly, I would say I'd be hypocritical not to mention that I had those same fears when I suddenly had an idea a few weeks ago. Because suddenly I didn't want to tell anybody my idea because I knew how simple it would be for somebody who could program to do it. And the funny thing is, that idea is not what I'm going after here. I could probably do it, but I think there's something bigger to go after. But anyways, 2017 was an interesting year for me because at the beginning of the year, we had the peak of version 2. And what had happened when version 2 came out was suddenly we realized, one, we had the people, but we realized that with the advantages of the AI, which the AI itself has always been exactly what we needed, we didn't have the scheduling system. We didn't know when that was coming back. We heard it was going to be Mo Beta, as they like to say. That somehow was going to come back, and so that was the only, if there was any disappointment I had for version 2, that was it. Everything else was fine. They even had the XML files if we wanted to write version 2 of RTS. At first, I could see that being a strong possibility because we had enough people in most nights hosting so that people could take turns being train master, or if they were at various positions that allowed them to be a train master, it'd be good. We knew we actually, because LA did not come out, that actually benefited us, because otherwise we would have had another territory that we were going to have to dispatch and be part of. There was talk of other things. There was talk about Seligman's sub down the road, but we really didn't hear too much about it at the beginning. But what had ended up happening, though, was between, if any time I was burnt out, was probably then, because it started feeling like a job. And it also, I started feeling that it was a strong core of people, but when you started losing some of the key players for various times, because they'd go away, or they would their jobs would change, or they get busy at work or whatever, you could really feel like, and then you get different personalities who would come in, would be interested, and then they wouldn't be interested. So a lot of people, I've seen people come and go from RTS servers. They'd be excited, they'd be all gung-ho, and then suddenly they're gone. So I don't feel so bad for being excited one time and being unhappy the next, because I've seen my users do it for years. Not necessarily the core users, but whatever core is left. I've already posted on the Wikia some of the things as far as what transpired between the former Southwest and Southeast servers, so I won't get into that. But that was servers that were run in two different ways. That really, in one way, it worked fine. It worked pretty good for me. The other way, it didn't really work for me at all. But I never interfered, because I wanted them to run the servers the way they wanted to run. I wanted to focus more on what I could do and just being a network for everybody. Because what had happened was, as the numbers were starting to go down, and this wasn't just on my server, this was happening in a lot of other servers too, because more and more people were starting to run their own servers and do their own, and enjoy single player, and finding different ways of enjoying it and not worrying about the simulation, or not worrying about the operation so much. I found that it was more and more difficult to fill in the role of the train master function. What really took California to the point where it became unbearable for me was the expansion. Once that expansion began, for me, California became, it was almost a pay for play. If you're a server, you're going to have to get that route. I never bought that route. Might be a good route and all, but I don't think it's necessary. You can you can have as much operation as you can. We never had enough people. By rights, California should have 3 dispatchers right now to be comfortably running. And I know the Southwest server often will run with 1, maybe 2. Even in our prime, 2 of us running was, you wouldn't want to go too much further, and we were running 100% schedules. Southwest servers backed off of those. But the thing that out of all of this that I never really understood in 2017. There was a lot of things that were happening. I went out west on a train, and I wasn't so interested to be up in the dome watching the signals because I was so used to it. Now, I hadn't been out for 5 years, but I realized that it wasn't as interesting to me as it used to be. And that's when I started questioning myself throughout the latter part, of 2017. I started thinking to myself, if I lost interest in trains? Because there's still a part of me that wonders that. But yet, I was in Run 8 the other night, and I was sure enjoying myself. So I would say I doubt it. I have a lot of other interests. My life certainly doesn't revolve around trains. I don't do much rail fanning. We go to Fostoria, my son and I, and we tend to. He's still into the trains, and I'm not part of a model railroad club any longer. Although that was mainly, it had a little bit to do with money, but it had a lot to do with the fact that I was already hosting or being part of sessions, so I really didn't need to, but now that's gone. Of course, there's servers out there if I want to be part of a session. I just choose not to go. And I know they're always there if I want to. I can go on the Southwest server, I can go on to the Southeast server, I can go to a lot of different places, including ones that are posted, like Scott has sessions. He'll post up, and I may, if I feel the need to have to do something. That's maybe if I see Scott's on one night, and I feel like chatting a little bit or running some trains with him, I do it. Ski and I, look like we were going, but then his schedule got really, really busy. He hasn't, and it's what kind of shocked me was Ski had emailed me the other day, and he said he hasn't run since November. That kind of blew my mind because I knew I hadn't talked to him much since around that time, or had emailed him, and it kind of blew my mind because I thought to myself, wow, that's a long time without running Run 8. And then I realized, well, geez, maybe I need to take that much of a break away from Run 8 and really see what's going on. And I've been saying that for a long time. I need to take that break. The issue at hand, and this is where I think it comes, I had a lot of creative juices that I wanted to flow into RTS. RTS could expand a lot further than what we originally had it in version 1. Now, mind you, I got very complacent with RTS, and I am a procrastinator. And I also, I really didn't think of the money too much, because obviously I never, was considering. I mean, there was a time where I thought, well, maybe one day I'll get to something, but then I always looked at it as a micro niche, and I didn't think of it as making money. But there have been times through the past year or two where I have looked at ways of making a second income. And the reason why that's happened is because my current job, basically I'm into deficit spending until my car is paid off. I have a new car that I got a 5-year loan on that's it's got just a little over a year left. 5 year, 5 year, no interest loan. It's got a little over a year left of a 5-year loan. And once that gets paid off, I should be back to break even. But until then, I've been in deficit spending for a while now. I got rid of my cable TV a couple months back. I don't regret it. I bought onto a streaming service, which is a hell of a lot cheaper for my wrestling fix back in the beginning of the month. Of all places, Japan Wrestling, but it's got English commentary, so it's kind of cool, and it's good wrestling. So my son and I enjoy that, and we spend a fraction of what I spent for cable. So that gives me everything that I need as far as entertainment. And of course, I have all the computer, the various other programs that I run. But getting back to what had really changed was I lost that ability to really, because the AI became so powerful and the lack of people became so apparent to run a system, it really, RTS was no longer needed. And the more you relied on whatever Run 8 would give you, the more you lost control of what you could do. So if you allowed Run 8 to do everything, which we've had these discussions, myself and Mike and others, we've had these discussions as far as, well, what should we let the AI do? I mean, do we allow it to do the random bingo ball counter or puller or whatever the heck you call it, where it just picks a train out of random midair between 5 and 60 minutes, whatever that's supposed to be? We never ran schedules that way. We always ran schedules that made sense. Yes, we had lateness factors, but we always knew when the trains were coming in and not coming in. Of course, we never had AI. So you had the good with the bad when version 2 came around, and I still say the good outweighed the bad, but unfortunately it really made RTS obsolete, despite the fact that guys like Mike and Tom with the Southwest and Southeast servers really were hoping that an RTS version 2 was going to come out, because they planned on using it in conjunction with in correlation with the AI functions, so that they could get things to work with the systems. As I was saying before, and I mentioned this with the emails, the way the Southeast server works is they use they do more switching as opposed to running of trains, whereas the Southwest servers does a combination of running trains and switching. So when they have dispatchers, they run trains, and when they don't, then they basically allow you to run the yards and catch up on switching duties and stuff like that. But they don't allow you to run trains unless you have an actual dispatcher scheduled session. I went a different way, and I wanted to do it instead of a 24/7 server. I wanted to go through a session type thing, and even places like Waycross, I saw potential in that. I thought Waycross was awesome. So we've seen a lot of things this year that has really kept me hopeful for Run 8, but it's really all it's taken away from that one creative outlet that I had. And now that I look at, not so much, I don't need to be creative or creative juice wise, but I also have the desire to look for that second income. I have that desire to make some extra money on the side. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to be, I'm not looking to quit my job. I like my job. I don't plan on quitting. I don't plan on doing this full time. That's why I went into YouTube. That's why I went into the monetization. Well, that failed. Once that failed, suddenly I was back at the drawing board again, and thus these things started changing. So what does this mean for the direction of where I'm going? And this is where this all comes down to. And I've talked about how I got to where I'm at now, and I believe I'm very clear on what I have to do. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I was looking at a very graphically intense Unreal Engine 4 program that was going to be 3D but small in scope, that wasn't going to be a difficult program, but that's not really what I want to do. And I'll keep that on the back burner for a possibility. Besides, it would require assets, it would require some artistic talent that I really don't have the experience to do. What I do have the experience, and even the design and the proven design schematics, are two things that at least one of two things I wanted to incorporate into Run 8. And I've actually did lobby for this for a while, or at least try my best. Even Ski has tried, and we never really got too far, and that was the external dispatcher. Now, I say the external dispatcher, not for now, really the external dispatcher is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned, because it's not open to other people as far as I know, or at least it's not documented to other people to really be part of or even understand. Since version 2 came out, there was a lot of people that said we could really use an AI dispatcher. Well, I don't know if the current designs for the external dispatchers going forward, people are thinking about AI dispatcher, but if you have an external dispatcher, you can have an AI dispatcher. Now, I'm not interested in developing an AI dispatcher for Run 8. I am interested in developing my AI dispatcher for RTS. And there's a big distinction to that. I don't care if it's compatible for Run 8. I don't care if it's compatible for external dispatcher. I already designed the thing. I designed it a long time ago. And it was based on concepts that I developed through dispatching Train Dispatcher 3. So what I want to do is be able to program a proof of concept. It's not going to be graphically intense. It's not going to be really much of anything other than a proof of concept. And it's a small project that can probably get my confidence back up. Now, what I do this in is hard to say. I can go with just basic and do a rudimentary graphic, which really doesn't matter. The graphics aren't the important thing, it's the logic that matters. Logic programming I have no problems with whatsoever. I am perfectly adept at logic programming. Ifs, ands, elses, nested ifs. Some of you might think, like, what the hell is he talking about? But basically, any electronics or integrated circuit or any type of you have and or circuits. This goes back to electronics, because I also hobbied in electronics in model railroading before I got into with the RTS type. I did this over 10 years ago, actually, back when I was into model railroading more, before I got into virtual railroading. And logic chips basically work the same way as programming. Now, I've been involved in programming since the 80s. So when I started first programming on a Commodore 64, funny enough, a Commodore 64, just thinking of that, I got rid of my Commodore 64 monitor the other day out of, it was stored in the bottom cupboard in my washroom. It still works to this day. And my son's now using it for my old PlayStation 2. And yeah, I brought that home this week because I'm doing they're doing some renovations in my washroom, so I got that out of there. I wanted to get a few of the things out of the washroom this week, which is why I was a little later coming tonight, and I still have a few things to do before I leave. But anyways, so I was going on about the way the AI dispatcher is a proof of concept. And the whole proof of that concept is, number one, can I have it dispatch efficiently enough but safely enough in a multitude of situations, various train sizes, sidings, priorities, speeds, HPT, you name it, whatever the case may be. Can I program that and prove that an AI can dispatch such a territory? The answer to that, I say, is yes. No train simulator has ever done a very adequate job of doing it. I plan on proving it can be done. I won't show you, I won't show the code, I won't show how I do it, but I will, my goal is to get that design out into a form and to basically show it in real time here on this YouTube channel once I have it programmed. Now, you're thinking, oh, well, what's the purpose of that? What do you need an AI dispatcher for if you're not even going to be associated with Run 8? Well, Run 8 can take a look at it and say, number one, if Run 8 still wants my services, which I highly doubt because I've burned enough bridges, then Run 8 can get my services as long as I make a little bit of money out of it. That's the key. I have to make a little bit of money out of it. If they don't want it, then I go on to the next phase. And the next phase is going to be AI switching. And again, this is with or without Run 8. I'm not worried about Run 8. I still have like I said, I still have my rail driver sitting here right in front of me. It's there. If I feel like I have to, it's almost like a smoker who quits and has to take a drag of a cigarette or something because they can't quit cold turkey. Well, you know, hey, I know there's always servers out there for me. There's always Run 8. I haven't uninstalled Run 8. I haven't given up on it. But the likelihood that I will ever host is probably, it's very, very low now. It got to the point where I didn't want to put dates anymore or times. I didn't want to put any pressure on me, and to the point where now I just like, no, I am not hosting. I have too many other things that I want to accomplish. The AI switching, and I'll get to why this is all, and it's 10:58 p.m., so I don't want to go too much further, and I got a little bit more cleanup before I head to bed tonight. But anyways, the AI switching is another proof of concept that AI can take a train and properly set off, determine which tracks, assign tracks, basically be able to figure out how to be a yardmaster in AI. Take the function of the yardmaster, like I said, assign tracks. So once the tracks are assigned based upon what cars they have, then have the functions of an AI yardmaster that can go in and reassess or reblock or build trains or dispatch trains out, stuff like that. You might be thinking, well, what the hell's that got to do with anything? There's a big picture here. And the big picture is RTS. These are all proofs of concepts that need to be in place if the big system is going to unveil. If I can get those proofs of concepts out and going sometime, hopefully before, I would say ideally I'd like to get it out before spring. I want to get those proofs of concepts out there before spring, because if I can get that far, my confidence should be high enough and I should know enough about whatever game engine I decide to use, whether I'm going to use Unreal Engine 4, I may go with Unity, I may go with, what the hell is it, some Programmer 2 or something like that, Program or Game Maker 2 or whatever the hell it is. I was looking at it the other day and I was just like, oh, this is kind of cool. Anything that can keep me away from the modern coding I don't mind coding. I don't mind testing code or touching code, but if I can find a way for it to do everything that I need to do uh, without giving away too much power, especially when a lot of what I'm looking at doing is actually not 3D but 2D. And it may be 2D that is compatible with 3D, but I'm less and less inclined or worried to even concern myself with 3D simulators. The big picture of what RTS has always been for me, and I've actually done a lot of design in this. It's probably buried in paperwork somewhere in my house, and maybe it is or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's gone. I had all the file structures, the record counts, the whole things, what the files were going to be. I did this about a decade ago. So, well, maybe not quite, almost. So around the time where I came up with RTS, and the whole idea was to have an entire network of cars, of rolling stock, engines throughout an entire railroad network that would be able to run on its own or with player interaction at any position. They could take over any position at any place. As more multiplayer involvement would become, it would become sort of like what VATSIM is to Flight Simulator. That's something that I was hoping Run 8 was headed that way. It never really went that way. Was the kind of almost like what the promise of, for those of you who remember World of Rails. I don't know what that concept entailed, but when Microsoft Train Simulator 2 was talked about and then eventually it was canceled, they were talking about a network of railroads, a world of rails, where somehow everything was going to get linked up and all this other stuff. We have a huge, huge opportunity and gap where a lot of people are focused on the eye candy. Everybody's really, really focused on the eye candy. It has been proven time and time again that the most interesting simulations and some of the most interesting work actually takes place in the 2D environments. That if you have a good strategy, that if you have a good gameplay, that if you have a good essence, think about the jobs that we're talking about. We're talking about dispatchers. Dispatchers, other than tower operators who would have a nice view, dispatchers are basically looking at screens. But they're dealing with a real living railroad and possibly working with other players or possibly AI dispatchers. Yardmasters do the same thing, although they may visually see the trains coming in and out of their yards. In modern days, they're dealing with modern yard reporting software, hump controllers, you name it. All of these jobs, although they do have a 3D potential, ultimately it's all about information. And all freight yard systems are all about information. The waybills, where are they going? Your shippers, your consignees. This is the core fundamental of what RTS has always been about. Freight Yard Manager did a great job at this because it met the supply and demands. But where Freight Yard Manager fell short was being able to continuously have a steady flow of demand for everything. Because there's only so many people out there that can run trains in a virtual simulation, whereas you can have an entire network of people. Like, I mean, I even thought about putting my server back up, my Run 8 server, and have a demand-based server. And somehow, figure out a way how to do that. But I wasn't willing to buy another copy of Run 8, and I did not. And on weekends, you know, the server would be down because my son would be using it. I would shut the server down, so it wouldn't be a 24/7. I might run it during the week or something, but no, I'm not doing it. I'm not giving up on it. It's basically at this point right now, that's the direction where I want to go. So I have a lot of research to do, but I also have a lot of programming that I want to start. Unfortunately, I know me, and I know I'm going to procrastinate. I know there's going to be times where I just don't have the energy, or I don't have the willpower to get through, and I'm going to be going through those crutches. And those crutches has for years been Run 8, and has been other things that have just made me happy and made me feel like I was part of a system and part of, you know, this awesome group of people and whatever over the years. So I'm still, and looking at the screen here, I'm still check out my Wikia daily. I'm still going to, although, and I hate this because this kind of means my YouTube content is going to go down, which I don't like, because I like communicating with you guys. I like letting you know what I'm feeling. I like letting you, not so much take you guys on a roller coaster, because I hate doing that, as I've said, but I want to be honest with people. I want to let people know how, you know, why I'm doing the things I'm doing, why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, why I'm at this point now. And yeah, less than 24 hours ago I was enjoying it, but there was a side of me that was just like, okay, I think I've been, you know, it's been 4 hours or 3 hours, and it's coming on 4 hours, and I'm like, all right, well, this is what I used to always do, but I really should be doing something else. And I certainly shouldn't be just watching YouTube and reading the same crap and watching the same YouTube crap, because it's almost as bad as watching TV. It gets to the point where I see the same videos over and over again. So, obviously my throat is going, so I think I'll call that for now. But feel free to, you know, post your messages, suggestions, ideas, whatever you would like to see in a simulator. Like I said, for 3D concepts and 3D simulators, I don't think I am ready to go that far, even in a small-based 3D simulator. I was pretty confident 2 weeks ago, but I honestly do not think I'm prepared to do that. And I backed out of, you know, I had an offer, actually. Quincy was putting in an offer there, said he'd help me, and then I started realizing, well, now I got to get into the whole artist side of things. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm probably a little over my head, even though it is so simple for somebody that knows what they're doing. I wasn't prepared to, you know, he was basically saying matter of all in, going all in, or whatever, which is kind of funny because this is the title of this video, is going all in. I've gone all in with RTS. RTS is a concept that I know thoroughly inside and out. I know what I've wanted RTS to be, and I had to, unfortunately, with Run 8, for the longest time I was limited to what I could do, but I still could do a lot. Now I can't really do much of anything other than operate whatever routes we have and whatever industries we have. But others outside of that, it's, yes, I can still create a version 2 XML generator and do all kinds of, and there's actually people out there that are going to be doing it. But RTS will live on. It will have the RTS name because RTS version 1 was never released. RTS beta was released for Run 8. Once I have the proofs of concepts, RTS will live on, but it will not be, RTS will not be something that's associated necessarily with Run 8 going forward down the road in 2018 and beyond. It doesn't look that way. I'm going to be watching Run 8. I'm going to be seeing what they do. If I feel as though there is an opportunity, or if I think something's going to change, then yes. But as I said earlier, in I believe late 2017, I didn't like the direction that things were going. And I know that there is some positive things that are happening, but for me, it's not compatible with the way I want to, where I see, the potential that I have never really pushed, and now I want to push it. I think it's something that's potentially worth some money. You add in elements. My son was talking. My son was looking for a tycoon type game, and I says, well, why not have a tycoon game that has actually cars that just disappear and never reappear again, and trains just magically either get hung up or they pass right through each other. Well, why not simulate the entire railroad? And if I can do the proof of concepts, and I can speed it up, because computers can go as fast as you can speed them up to. Speed it up at 100 times, you're just doing logic, and I can demonstrate that, at 100 times speed, I can just speed it up right in front of your eyes, and you can see that it is just dispatching, and there's no bottlenecks, and there's no, there's no stalemates. That would be a proof of concept that would work. And it may not work. There might be issues. There may be some times where if there's too much human interaction required, then the proof of concept would fail. So, but we'll see. And I'm looking forward to that challenge. If I get that one going, then it's gonna be a huge boost for my confidence. It's the procedure that I'm looking to develop next, in one way or form. If I can't do it with a game engine, I will do it in just BASIC. It'll be rudimentary, but I will get something going relatively soon. I'll find a territory that I think is worth trying. I'll look at the TD3 territories. Hell, I might even do the Sanford sub, to be quite honest, or something similar to that. It doesn't really matter. Whatever the territory, it'll probably be single track territory. I may deal with double tracks as well, and look at crossovers and triple track sections and what have you, but we'll see how that goes. Anyways, my voice is gone, so figured that would happen. So it's 11:13. I'm gonna call it the night. Anyways, thanks for listening, and as always, feel free to post anything you want, and I watch it all, and I'll reply to as much as I can. Kidding. Appreciate it. Thanks again for your support, guys, through the years, and hopefully we got an interesting 2018, and you're going to be around for the ride, and whether you're in Run 8 or not, keep on rocking with Run 8, and I'll make my appearances with Run 8. I'm not done with Run 8 yet. It's just that's no longer going to be the primary hobby focus during the week for me moving forward from this point forward. So that's why I say I'm all in, because I am. Anyways, have a good one, guys. We'll talk to you later.